Today we're going to be talking about hope, and essentially I'm going to be arguing that our hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. Okay, so that's actually all we're going to be talking about. So now you can be done, I guess. Last year I went to a conference, kind of a big nexus called Jubilee. And there was a speaker there. Her name was Jenna Nardella. Jenna Nardella is a little older than me. She's in her early 30s. And she started a relatively well-known NGO called Blood Water Mission. You guys heard of Blood Water Mission? They do some clean water and AIDS work throughout the world. And for all intents and purposes, Jenna Nardella is a millennial success story. Okay, so we are people, and you guys are people, who long to do something good in the world, to live with purpose, and to make a difference. And we often are trying to change the world. That's what millennials like. We like want to buy Tom's shoes because Tom's shoes, they've given away shoes, you know? We're like, oh, perfect, they love people, I'll buy those shoes. And so we'll even make our purchasing decisions, like Warby Parkers, I'm wearing those right now. I guess they give away glasses, though I buy them because they fit my face, but that's neither here nor there. And we want to make a difference. So Jenna Nardella, she's doing this thing. She was 21 years old. 21 years old, and it's a multi-million-dollar NGO. And they've drilled a lot of wells. They've done a lot of work in AIDS-torn countries. And objectively, they've actually done a lot of good. It's really been amazing what they've been able to do. And so what surprised me was her talk. Her talk was on how working for the good of the world is actually more like a long, slow defeat. It's actually more like a long, slow defeat. So what she was doing is she was trying to, in some ways, temper our expectations by talking about, she talked about drought. She talked about, well, I went to these spaces and we built these wells, and then the water just dried up. No water. Went to these places to try to do sex education, and corrupt politicians put a stop to it. Right, so she's working for the good of the world, and for her, 10 years in, this feels like a long, slow defeat. Because the world remains a source of chaos. So it feels like every week we have a mass shooting. It's like every week. It's like every week, someone is being killed by someone else on American soil in a high-profile way, and that's just ignoring all the random acts of violence that exists. All the people in deep pain who we're just living right next to, and we don't even encounter it because it's not on the news. Right? This feels like it's a thing over and over and over and over again. And so what we need to ask and answer is, how do we keep getting up in the morning and being faithful to Jesus? So I want you to imagine a little fire in front of me. This is a fire. You guys picturing a fire? It's little, it's cute, it's nice. And it's the fire of our dreams. Okay? This is a fire of this is what I'm about to do. This is a fire of our dreams to change the world. Okay? We see the fire? It's crackling. It's nice. I have a cup of water in my hand. You guys see this cup of water? I'm about to do this.
No, don't.
I just poured water on your dreams. I did it. He did that. I really did just pour water on your dreams. And the reason I poured, and I've been looking forward to doing that for like 4 days. I really, when I sat down, I was like, I need an intro for this talk on hope. I was like, I have an idea. I'm going to pour water on their dreams. Not because we shouldn't have hope, but because our hope is misplaced, and we'll dive into that. And so in some ways, living well with hope is kind of like falling in love. And so we've seen enough Nicholas Sparks books and movies and whatever, and heard enough love songs that we think that you're in love and this lasts forever. And then what you hear from married people is that's just straight false. It just couldn't be more false. As it turns out, there are times when you're not in love. Ooh, as it turns out, there are times where you actually don't really even like that other person. Right? Because you're living together forever. Like, oh, wow, you're annoying. That's just true. My wife thinks I'm annoying all the time. And so, but we've heard being in love is like what sustains our relationship. And then when you get married, and then someone pours water on your dreams, what keeps us there? Right? And so this is what we need to be talking about, is what's our sustenance? What's our hope if it's not that we are going to see a world without violence? If it's not that you guys are going to go out there and change the world. You're going to do amazing things. But the biblical message is that we live in an in-between time. Okay, we live between Jesus and the eschaton, Jesus in the end, and in the in-between time, the beast still reigns in Babylon. And that's using some biblical parlance for violence is still the rule of the day. It just is. And so how do the people of God remain faithful to God, trusting that the kingdom really is present when this is the world that we live in? When our hopes get dashed over and over and over again. We think we made progress, and then something else happens. So, that's what we're going to be talking about. We have a few things to talk about. One is, what does hope look like? Where does it come from? And then how do we live in it? Okay, so we're going to be reading from, again, Hebrews chapter 11. So if you would stand with me. So this is Hebrews 11, starting in verse 8, and we are going to read through 16. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place that he later received his inheritance, obeyed and he went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him in the same promise, because he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so from this one man, he, as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and as countless as the sand on the seashore. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking about the country that they had left, they would have had the opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. This is the word of the Lord.
Praise be to God.
Okay, it's going to be seated. So, 3 things tonight, or today, this morning, whatever it is. What does it mean to hope? Where does hope come from? And what does hope look like? So first, we need to mention again that Jesus, sitting at the table with his disciples, knew where he came from, and he knew where he was going. He knew where he came from, and he knew where he was going. So he gets up from the table, and he wraps a towel around his waist, and he washes his disciples' feet. And so, one thing I want to point out to us is that when we think about hope, we actually often think about it in terms of like a wish. Okay, so we think like, we wish we could get a burrito and a job and right? It's like, oh, I wish, actually, or we wish that Chipotle didn't give you E. coli. That was in Boston, right?
Yep.
Yeah, dang. Scary. We wish we have this idea, and hope actually turns out to be something more like wishful thinking. So on the way up here, I've told this story to some of you guys. I really wanted some Wendy's. I really did. I was like driving up here, and I was like, dang, I hope I pass a Wendy's. And it was just a wish that I had. I was like, if only I could pass. And I just passed Subway after Subway after Subway. Disappointing. I hate Subway. But I wished, I was just longing, please give me a Wendy's. I didn't know when this was coming, but for me, this was just wishful thinking, basically. Like, I know I want this thing, and I just want it to pop up. I just want to be present. And so then we can kind of treat the future and God like God is a genie. When I was a kid, I was really excited about the story about Solomon, where God goes to Solomon. He's like, Solomon, I'll give you anything you want. And Solomon's like, I want wisdom. And God's like, good, and money too. And I was like, I would be in bed and I'd be thinking about this story and I'd be like, all right, if God asks me for whatever I want, I can't say wisdom. He'll know. He'll know I want money. And I'll be like, I gotta ask for like courage or like, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll ask to be obedient. I'll be like, God, please just make me obedient. And he'll be like, good, John, here's money. And I really did think that. That's the thing I really thought. But sometimes we treat God in a lot of ways. Like God's just popping up as a genie, giving us what we want. Right? And our hope is that God would be just like this. That God is granting wishes. Like God is in Aladdin, like we talked about last night. That He's just there. He's giving us stuff. Hope doesn't actually work like that. Michael Gorman wrote this book on Becoming the Gospel. Michael Gorman's a New Testament scholar, and he's a great guy probably. This book's really good. And he talks about hope. He has a section on what does it mean to hope. And he argues that hope is the present participation in God. Present participation in God in anticipation of the future. So it's actually not only anticipation of the future, it is present participation in God. And so in this sense, hope is just the future tense of faith. Or faith is the present tense of hope. Faith and hope are two sides of the same coin. So in some ways the talk last night and the talk this morning fit together like a glove, because faith and hope are longing in presently enacting what God is doing in the future, or what God says He's going to do in the future. It's living now as if God's promises for the future were already true. We're going to talk about that. So, again, Hebrews 11. By faith, Abraham, when he was called to go to a place that he would later receive as inheritance, he obeyed and went, even though he didn't know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in his foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise, because he was looking forward to the city with foundations whose architect and builder is God. Well, that's interesting. Now, if you just turn to Genesis, and you look at the passage, and I'll read it so you can turn there, Genesis chapter 12. God comes to Abraham at this point in the story. And God's like, hey, Abram, get up and go. And Abraham goes. Right, so I'll read it, and then I'm going to point out something that is fascinating about this. So Genesis 12, 1 through 3, or 1 through 4. The Lord had said to Abram, go from your country and your people and your father's household to the land I will show you, and I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. And so Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. You read that. Now, question. Does that say anything about a city? That passage there? No, nothing about it. And you read the story of Abraham, like there's no indication in Genesis 12 through 22, which is the story of Abraham, that Abraham is looking forward to a city whose foundation and builder was God. It doesn't mention it anywhere. And so then what we have to do is we have to think, what is the writer of the book of Hebrews even talking about? What's he getting after? And to get this, we need to get the story of where Abraham fits in. So the Bible starts with God making everything. And he plants a garden, which is actually, scholars think, a sacred space. And something like a garden city. This is the Garden of Eden. A sacred space where God's dwelling and living, and his shalom is going to flow out from the whole earth. And then he puts two people there, and he says, go nuts, go wild, have a great time. You can do whatever you want. Just don't eat from the tree. He said, just have a ball. Have a blast. Just don't eat from the tree, and you're good. And live in this garden city, and work it, and keep it, and bring my shalom out to the rest of the earth. And then they rebel against God. and they decided, oh, we're not going to do what God says, we're going to do what we want. So they do the thing that they're not supposed to do. They eat the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and then they get expelled from the garden city, and chaos enters into the world. Disorder enters into the world. And so then what you get is Genesis 4 through 11, which is just story after story after story of violence, essentially. Violence and oppression. Until it culminates in Genesis chapter 11, which is the Tower of Babel, which is basically a Garden of Eden without God in it. Right? Which is a city built up to usurp God. So it starts with a city, a garden city, and then we get to the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11, which is a city that stands against God, that stands against the way things are supposed to be. And then Abram gets called in Genesis 12. And Abram, the writer of the book of Hebrews is telling us, is looking forward to a city whose foundation and builder is God. Right? And so if you're reading this through the lens of Genesis, Abraham, when he's called by God, is looking forward to, I'm going to argue, Eden. He's looking forward to God making things right. I don't see how else we can understand that Hebrews passage. It's super weird. Unless we see it in the context of Eden, Babel, Abram. Abram gets called to be a blessing to the world. And God is going to bring back Eden. And there's a number of promises in the Old Testament that are fascinating about God bringing back Eden. And we'll read a few of them. But note that Abraham is looking forward when he leaves. In the present tense, he's not just looking forward to, say, the promised land. He is looking forward to that. But he's going to die before he gets there. Right? Abram's hope and his movement of following God in the present tense is taking the long view of redemption. He is looking forward to his city, whose designer and builder is God. And so Abraham, in the present, gets up. And so the writer of Hebrews is arguing that Abraham had the end of the story in mind, and he was living as if it was already true. He's living as if it's already true. And so this, there's a, on Being again, Krista Tippett, my girl. She interviewed Congressman John Lewis from Georgia, who's dope. And he was a member of the Civil Rights Movement. He was talking about what it meant to live as a blessed community. And I'm just going to read some quotes from this. So, Representative Lewis says, I remember even before then, in 1951, when I was 11 years old, I traveled one summer to an uncle and aunt with some of my first cousins from rural Alabama to Butler for a visit, for a trip. I'd never been outside the South, and being there gave me hope. I saw how people lived there, and the way they were living in Buffalo. Maybe somehow, in some way, we can make the South make a region. I wanted to believe, and I did believe, that things would get better. But later, I discovered that you have to have this sense of faith that you're moving toward what's already done. It's already happened. So he's talking about his experience in the Civil Rights Movement. You have to have this sense of faith that what you're moving toward is already done. It's already happened. Krista, say some more about that. Representative Lewis. It's the power to believe that you can see, that you visualize that sense of community, that sense of family, that sense of one house. And you have to live that you're already there. That you're already in that community. Part of that sense of one family, one house. And if you visualize it, if you can even have faith that it's there, for you, it is already there. If you can live like it's there, it is there. And during the early days of the movement, I believe that the only true and real integration for that sense of the beloved community existed in the community itself. Existed in the movement itself. So here's John Lewis talking about his present activity in the Civil Rights Movement. Getting up, moving, on the move for justice. And he's doing it because he believes that a future blessed community is already present. The thing that's going to happen, we're living into it. We're living if it's already true. Okay, and so I think this is a perfect illustration of Christian hope. That it is in the future, but it's also right now. It's in the future, but it's also right now. But we need to be honest with ourselves that we don't hope well. And the reason that we don't hope well is that not because we don't hope, it's because we hope in the wrong things. And whenever this is just like I feel like anthem with Ivy League students especially, is that there's lots and lots of things that we have been trained to put our hope in. So I'm just going to list a few of them. One, Harvard degrees. Let's be honest. We have a future, and part of our confidence in our future is we are going to graduate from Harvard. And why do you work so hard in the present, at school? Because we think that it's going to translate into a future reality. Why did you work so hard to apply for Harvard in the first place? Because you think it's going to translate into a future reality. We have hope that our Harvard degree will get us where we want to go. We put our hope in our GPA then. We put our hope in our extracurriculars and in whatever club we're running. And it's the same thing at all the Ivies and lots and lots of colleges. But especially, this is like a Ivy League idol, especially because people are always telling you how great you are. You're a Harvard student. You're the best of the best. You're going to change the world. So we put our hope in a Harvard degree. Another thing we put our hope in. Politicians. This is a mistake. This is a big mistake. And I'm not sure if there's ever been a year that makes it more clear that this is a mistake like this one. But we really do believe that if the right person or the wrong person becomes president or not president, the world is ending or not ending. And we really do believe that the future, our future hope rests on who gets elected. Presidents are our heroes. What Barack Obama's first election, what's the word that he ran on? Hope. This is an American thing. We put our hope in the president. We put our hope in politicians. We put our hope in the person who is in charge. Okay? Another thing we put our hope in, if you're on the other side of the equation, if you're not putting your hope in the government, you're putting your hope in markets. Oh, I really believe in that. I'm a Penn, so I talk to a lot of Wharton students. My Wharton students really believe in the free market, like they really believe in it. And they're like, if we just had free market, everything would be great. Put our hope in markets working the way they're supposed to work, right? And so it's like the future that we want is predicated on our degree, or on a president, or on markets, and that's just three, right? There's a bunch of other things that we put our hope in. Compound interest, right? If I just save money over time, I'm going to be a millionaire when I die. It's going to be awesome. Right? And so it's like we're putting our hope into all these spaces. Now, here's what I've come to realize about this, is that we put our hope in these things because they are the mechanism for the future that we want. Because we want to be comfortable. Our eschaton is comfort. And it's people not telling us what we have to do. Right? The thing that we hope in, the end, the goal of our whole existence is having a comfortable life where no one's telling us what to do. And so if that's the case, then degrees and presidents and markets and compound interest, all these things make more sense because they're a vehicle for this hope. I mean, in reality, they're not, right? Because the world could easily fall apart, and then you don't have, all the presidents and degrees and compound interest in the world isn't going to get you the comfortable future that you want. But we want a comfortable future, and so what seems like the best way to get that? Well, Harvard is a good way to get it. Presidents are a good way to get it. Markets are a good way to get it. Compound interest is a good way to get it. And so the thing that we're actually looking forward to dictates then what we put our hope in. So I want you to imagine that you're hoping in a world of peace. Like a world of peace, a world of no violence. Or a world where people love those who are different from them. Or they do that. A place where the human heart is turned in service toward God and their neighbor, and things are working as they should be. So imagine if this was the thing that was in our bones, the thing that we were longing for, the thing that we were putting our hope in, the thing that we were hoping for. Then markets and degrees and presidents, well, of course they're not going to make a world of peace. Of course they're not going to make a world without violence, a world where people's hearts are turned toward God and their neighbor. So read Hebrews 11 again. Chapter verse 13. All these people were still living by faith when they died, and they did not receive the things that were promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. You hear that? All these people didn't receive the thing promised. They heard it, they saw it, and welcomed it from a distance. And they were admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they're looking for a country that isn't their own. I was all jazzed when I was reading this again. I taught Hebrews in a Bible course, and this totally slipped me. It's amazing. If they had been thinking of the country that they had left, they would have had the opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. They were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. They were looking toward Aslan's country. We want to get there. We want a better country, a heavenly one. So if you've ever read, again, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Reef Chief, one of the characters, he's willing to brave lots and lots of terrifying things because his heart's desire is to get to Aslan's country. That's his hope. That's his heart's desire. And so he'll sail to the end of the world to get there. Right? And the people in the book of Hebrews, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. So, first point, Christian hope. We hope well when we hope for a better country, a heavenly one. We hope well when we put our hope in what God is doing. Abraham was looking forward to a city whose foundations and builder was God. We are looking forward. Christian hope is looking forward to Eden. It's looking forward to a world made right. That's what it's looking forward to. So, Ezekiel chapter 6, verse 8. There's a lot of promises like this in the Old Testament. I'm just going to read two of my favorites. So Ezekiel is a prophet, and he's writing in a time when Israel is failing miserably, and exile is imminent, and they are going to be scattered from this space. And he's prophesying that this is because you've turned your back on God, but God is going to do some stuff. And so, this is one of the culminations of one of the things that God's going to do. Chapter 6, verse 8. They will say, this land that was laid waste has become like the Garden of Eden. After you're exiled, God's going to do work. And they're going to say, this land that was laid waste has become like the Garden of Eden. That's amazing. And the cities that were lying in ruins, desolate and destroyed, are now fortified and inhabited, built and inhabited. So if you're reading Genesis 1, the earth is formless and void, and God orders it. Right? And here, what was once formless and void becomes again ordered, inhabited, or habitable and inhabited. This is the promise in Ezekiel, that God's not just going to bring us back to Jerusalem. God is going to bring back the Garden of Eden. He's going to make everything right. Isaiah chapter 40. Same thing, prophesying about what's going to happen and then what God's going to do. And many people will come and say, come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of God of Jacob, that he may teach us concerning his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For the law will go forth from Zion, which is Jerusalem, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. I can just read that. And he will judge between the nations, and he will render decisions for many peoples. And, get this is a prophecy in Isaiah of what's going to happen. They will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation. Never again will they learn war. Imagine it. A world without war. So, this is, John Lennon didn't make that up. You guys aren't that old. You got it? That's what I'm talking about. Great song. Imagine Isaiah saying, this is what God's about. A world where swords are becoming instruments of production. Where violence turns into farming. And he says some other stuff. He's like, and the whole food chain. They're going to be all vegan. You know, like the lion's going to lie down with the lamb. I'm not going to eat it. Like, that's cool. It's like, and that's later in Isaiah chapter 66. And what you get is these pictures and images of a world without violence. A world of peace. A better country. A heavenly one. And this isn't just the world, this is also for you. So God promises things to you as a person. Romans chapter 6. What shall we say then? Shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase? By no means. This is the Apostle Paul talking. We are those who have died to sin. How can we live in it any longer? Or don't you know that all of us who are baptized into Christ were baptized into his death? We were therefore buried with him through baptism into his death, in order that, just as Christ was raised from the dead to the glory of the Father, we too may live, present tense, in new life. Okay, the resurrection of the dead that happened in the past in Christ is our present. Why? Because if we have been united with him in a death like his, we will certainly in the future be united with him in a resurrection like his. So Paul's saying, Jesus rose from the dead. In the present, we live in resurrection life. Why? Because we're going to participate in that. Because that's the future. For we know that our old self was crucified with him so that the body ruled by sin might be done away with. And then we should no longer be slaves to sin, because anyone who has died has been set free from sin. Now, if we have died with Christ, we believe that we will also live with him. For we know that since Christ was raised from the dead, he cannot die again. Death doesn't have mastery over him. The death he died to sin once for all. The life he lives to God. Okay, so we have this promise in Paul for not just a world of peace, not just a world that's becoming a Garden of Eden, but a people whose hearts are turned to God. So imagine that you should no longer be slaves to sin, because anyone who has died will be free from sin. You love your neighbor. You love God. You are utterly committed to other people's good instead of your own. And so the promises of the future are big. Like, so you know, have you read Jim Collins' Get It Great? Have you ever read that? That's like a chintzy kind of pop business book. And he talks about this thing called BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goal. And he's like, businesses need to have BHAGs. And if you're going to get somewhere, and like a business BHAG is like, oh, we want to, I don't know. It's like if you're Apple, and you're like, I want everyone to own an iPhone, or whatever. Apple probably does want that. So it's like, this is a big, hairy goal, and it's audacious, and it's crazy. Nothing that any business could ever come up with is anything even remotely like what God is saying is going to happen. Right? This stuff, Eden, plowshares, resurrection, this is otherworldly hope. This is a hope that we can't make up. This is a hope that, to be honest, is too good to be true, but it is. So we had a seminary professor, one of our favorites, his name is Pete Anders, and he has this story where he was telling the gospel to some bros in London, and they were like, listen, that seems too good to be true. And Anders was like, yes, nailed it. That's exactly right. The hope of the gospel that God is good. Listen, we need to hear this again, because I'm getting excited about it. God is about resurrection life. God is about a world of peace. God is about a space where we don't have mass shootings anymore. Where we don't have genocide anymore. Not only that, we don't have these little acts of violence that we see and experience every day. This is what God is about. And this is what the Christians put their hope in. They put their hope in heavenly country. And that he whose promise is faithful, and he will surely do it. But we need to ask, what does this hope look like in practice? Because sometimes we think hope is like optimism. It's like putting on rose-colored glasses and saying, yeah, it's all fine. Everything is great. We have our hope in God, right? I have no sorrow anymore. Nothing bad has happened to me. There's nothing to grieve. But if you read through the Bible, you read through the story of Jesus' life, this is very clearly not the case. Jesus, who puts his hope in God, is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's just longing for this not to be the case. He's longing that God would not have him drink this cup that he's going to drink. We get a picture of Jesus who isn't wearing rose-colored glasses, who actually sees the world for what it is. And the world is a place to grieve. We're not there yet. And so hope needs to recognize that. Hope isn't pretending like it's all okay. Hope is not pretending like it's all okay, because it's not. And that's just true. So look at Abraham and Sarah. I love this. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, well, she was able to bear children because she considered him faithful. And so from this one man, and him as good as dead. He's as good as dead. What a thing to say. Abraham, good as dead. Might as well be. From him came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. Sarah has a barren womb. You know what barren wombs don't produce? Children. They don't produce children. Abraham's barren. Abraham is as good as dead. He's done. There's nothing in Abraham's present situation that would indicate that God is on the move at all. Her womb is barren. Abraham is as good as dead. And these are the spaces that God is operating in, and they're not spaces we can pretend like don't exist. Right? The hope is in the midst of barren wombs and being as good as dead. Right? So if you're looking at the story of Israel, you know what nations of slaves, groups of slaves don't become? Nation states. They don't become nations. Right? But that's what happens in the story of the Exodus, that God calls this group of slaves in Egypt and plants them in the promised land and gives them a land. Barren women don't have kids. But God works. God is operative. But it's no good pretending like Sarah's not barren and that Abraham's not as good as dead. Because they are. But that doesn't mean God's not on the move. That doesn't mean God's not on the move, because God works exactly in those spaces. So sometimes in our lives there is nothing to indicate that God is on the move. Sometimes it's totally dark. And what we're saying is that we believe in a God who throws lights on, even when it's at its darkest. That's what Christian hope is. It's not pie-in-the-sky optimism, everything's fine. And it's not total cynicism, nothing will get better. Right? We are deeply rooted, firmly rooted, in the reality of the world as it is, but we're trusting in the world to come. We're living as if the world to come is already true. And this is what Jesus is saying. Repent, because the kingdom of God is here. What's going to come is already true. What's going to come is already true. God has already defeated death. We're living like it. But that's not pretending like it's all okay. That's not pretending like nothing is bad, like sometimes we can see exactly where we're going. Notice then that the paradigmatic act of hope is the exact same one as courage, which is endurance. Endurance to be faithful to God, even when it doesn't make sense what God's doing at all. We're living right now in endurance, in anticipation of the future. Notice Hebrews chapter 12. Someone read Hebrews chapter 12 last night. I was like, yes, that's what we're talking about. So, notice Jesus, who for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross. He endured it. He was faithful. Why? Because of hope. The joy that's set before Jesus causes him to endure the present. Why can we get up every day and work for a better world when it continues to disappoint us and when the beast still reigns in Babylon? Well, because we believe in a God who's building and bringing a better world, a heavenly one. We're living between resurrections, Jesus's and ours. And Christian hope is anticipating this future reality of God in the present. The promise of God is that there is another city. That there's another city. And that we can live into it. We can live into it right now. So HCFA, I have some questions for us. Are we longing for God's country? What is the thing that we long for? FOMO is a thing that people say. Now I'm not going to say it anymore, right? Does anybody say FOMO? Yeah. Whatever. It's not the point. We still fear missing out on stuff, right? Even last night, it was like, I bet you, there's like a dance party in here, right? It's fun. And I bet some of us were like, should I be at that dance party? That dance party seems fun. And then they're like, no, I should be talking to this person. But then we're pulled, like, I don't know, the dance party seems fun. You're there too. And so we're worried about like missing out on stuff. And this is just a reality of our lives. Should we, and think about it, you chose to go to Harvard, right? But if you choose to go to Harvard, you didn't choose to go anywhere else. And Harvard's a great school, which is awesome, but you always have choices. And our choices are sometimes like, well, should I do this? Because if I do this, then I can't do any of that. Right? So FOMO is a real thing. I'm arguing that FOMO is a good thing, and we should fear missing out on the right thing. And the right thing is a heavenly country, God's country. FOMO is good. So let's fear missing out on the right thing. Do we long? Do we long to be a part of God's country? Of what God is doing? Are we people who are longing for this? That's my first question. The second question is, are we the type of community that cultivates endurance to following Jesus in a world of hope? Not through optimism. Not through just saying everything's okay, but by believing and trusting that what God has said He's faithful to do. And so we get up off our table and we put towels around our waist and we follow Jesus into courage. Is that the type of people that we are? Because we do know something about the end of the story. We do know something about how the story ends. And so when I'm reading books, this is a little confession moment. When I'm reading books and it's a scary book, you know what I do? Go to the end. Like, is he going to live or die? And if it turns out that they die, I put that book away. Totally uninterested. But if it turns out that they live and I see them like chatting at the end of the story, I'm like, oh good, I can weather through the present. I can weather through this terrifying part because I know it's a good ending. I know they live happily ever after. And so for me, when I read books, that's exactly what I'm doing. And for the Christian community, that's exactly what we're doing. We're reminding ourselves that we know the end of the story and that we're living into it in the present. That for us, the kingdom of God is at hand because it is. And it will be. And so, HCFA, are we doing this? Are we living but willing to give up our control in God and follow Him into the world without being in charge and being daring, without having certainty all the time, without God proving Himself to us with a personal commitment, and when right now we might not see success, when we're trusting in the future? Are we going to endure and follow Jesus because God is good? Because God is faithful. This is what Sarah's saying. She considered Him who made the promise to be faithful. The Christian life is all about the fidelity of God. It's all about the faithfulness of God to you and us living into that. Do we believe that what God has said He will do? So, in closing, I do want to talk about Harry Potter one more time. As an encouragement to you, Harry, at the end, he has the resurrection stone. So why is the resurrection stone important? Because it was a community he can walk to his death. So he's got the resurrection stone, and his mom pops out, and his dad, and Sirius, and Lupin, and they all pop up, and they walk with him, and guard him as he walks courageously to the space that it needs to be. So to me, this is what the point of the resurrection stone is, the Hebrews 11, the cloud of witnesses. Is that you literally need each other if you're going to be courageous in the present. We need a faithful community of people who are believing that what God has said, He will actually do. And then we walk with each other toward Jesus and following Jesus. So, in closing, I'm going to leave you with a little benediction. This is from the book of Thessalonians, and it's one of my favorites. May God Himself, the God of peace, sanctify you through and through. May your whole spirit, soul, and body be kept blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. The one who calls you is faithful. He will surely do it. Let's pray. Father, we are grateful that you are